Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. I am your host, Jason Miles, here for another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us on this very lovely Saturday. If you're a returning subscriber, listener, or one of our very valued patrons, fuck yeah. So glad to have you back. If you're listening to this on audio later, welcome as well. As many of the patrons know, we have launched a new series called The Crisis Papers. I want to say bi-weekly, but it's not bi-weekly because it's me and I have these big goals and I just don't reach them. But a series of essays about a wide range of topics. Issue number 5 is up. Second time around, musings on how we got another Trump term. Now, all these are free to all patrons, depending on your tier. The magazine formatted version is free as well. But if you are not a patron and would like to support this show and this type of writing, you can purchase them wherever you are watching or listening to the show. There is a link in the description to the Crisis Papers. Also, if you enjoy what we do here on TIR, stuff like these, we do call-in shows. It's expensive. I do pay by the second. The best way to sure we can continue to do this is to become a patron for as little as $2 a month or $30 for the year. You can be part of the TIR crew, hang out with us in the patrons only champagne room, and depending on your level, you can get exclusive patron only merch. If you want to try it out, it's free. That's right, free for 7 days. That's right, a 7-day trial on Patreon. Wherever you are watching or listening to this, there are links in the description to join as well. So don't wait, act now. Now, let's talk about the matter at hand, the LA wildfires. If you are a returning listener subscriber, if you are a listener to the sports show that we do here on TIR, Beyond the Red Zone, then you know I was literally in LA during the wildfires. It's fucked up a lot of shit for me, but in all seriousness, I was there, did a show from the world famous Rainbow, which maybe later on in the show Bill can joke about later because he doesn't like the rain as much as I do, but I do like that place for its nostalgic LA history. There's a line from one of my favorite Steely Dan songs, Babylon Sisters, the opening track off their final album of the Laurel Canyon music era, the album Gaucho. The line is a pre-chorus sung by angelic female backing vocals. Here come those Santa Ana winds again. What are the Santa Ana winds again, you might ask? The Santa Ana winds happen when a large area of high pressure becomes established over the interior of western U.S., centered around the Great Basin, which includes much of Nevada and parts of Utah, Idaho, and southeast Oregon. These are generally dry desert areas, which means the winds that arrive in California are lacking moisture. With winds flowing clockwise around high pressure systems, they move south and west into Southern California, where they descend over the inland Sierra Mountains. As the air descends, it drives further and accelerates in speed. Wind speeds can increase further as they funnel through the valleys and gorges in the area, much like water increases its speed as it passes through a hose. Author and professor Mike Davis, who actually was on the show before he passed, rest in peace, wrote not just about the Santa Ana winds, but about the building of housing in areas that historically have been susceptible to what happens when strong, dry winds meet fire in gorgeous, picturesque areas of the Golden State. Real estate developers and the wealthy love these areas because they are profitable to build mega mansions. And for the people that live in them, they can live separated from the visible degradation of Los Angeles. While we can all agree that it is tragic to see people lose their homes due to natural disasters, maybe the most frustrating issue is the fact that instead of learning these areas aren't good to live in, they rebuild and the process starts over. Malibu, for example, has historically been a site for wildfires. For decades, scientists have warned about a massive fire disaster in this area. This pattern reflects the capitalist prioritization of profit over environmental sustainability and public safety. Real estate developers and affluent individuals capitalize on the aesthetic appeal of these regions, constructing luxury homes that not only symbolize economic disparity, but also disregard the inherent ecological dangers. The repeated destruction and reconstruction of these properties underscores a systemic issue where economic interests overshadow the well being of the broader community and environment. The city's response to wildfires has also come under scrutiny. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass faced critical leadership tests as questions emerged about the city's wildfire response. Critics pointed to budget cuts and resource allocation as factors that may have hindered effective firefighting efforts. Fire Chief Kristen Crowley highlighted the challenges posed by reduced funding, which impacted the department's capacity to respond to multiple simultaneous fires. This situation raises concerns about the prioritization of public funds and the influence of economic interests on policy decisions. But today we'll discuss the city's response to the fires and if more could have been done from a prevention standpoint. And we'll discuss the response as well. To do that with me, I have my co-host, my homie, my dog. He is the man of the Mau Mau Hour. He is, as some say, the Prince of Miami. Please welcome Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles.
How are you on this lovely, for me, it's a lovely Saturday morning. I'm sure it's lovely for you in Florida, or is it overcast?
Pretty lovely. It's pretty lovely.
Another person that is no longer in Los Angeles, but does have a history, a very storied history in the city of Angels. Filmmaker. He worked for the city government for quite some time. He is our man on the inside, if you will. He is one and only Wild Bill CODY. Yee!
Well, hello. I'm wearing my Long Beach hat. That's my SoCal nod.
Can you hear me okay, Bill?
I can hear you.
Okay. Real quick, for people that might be unfamiliar with your time in LA politics, can you maybe not have to say who you work for? I don't know if you feel comfortable saying that, but can you talk a little bit about what you did in LA?
I'll try and make it real quick. I got recruited years ago to work on a bunch of campaigns. I was recruited by a gentleman. Some of you know the name of Eric Garcetti. Probably a lot of you don't like, but is actually it's a very smart man. I was actually recruited out of progressive activism, which I'm sure some of my constituents didn't know. But so I worked on several campaigns, but then at the end, I was a senior field deputy for one of the council members there, and I was in the Council District 1, which is actually just south of Altadena, and in Highland Park and Mount Washington and Glassell Park. The depending on how you look at it, either the gentrification center of the world or the hip center of the world, depending on how you want to look at it. If you're a fan of Phoebe Bridgers, maybe you think it's cool, and maybe if you're like a DSA member, you think it's awful. I don't know.
What? So Altadena was in your area as well, you said?
No. Well, can I say a couple things real quick
Sure,
about Altadena and the Eaton Fire? Okay.
Please.
So Altadena is a community, it's unincorporated community in the county of Los Angeles between Glendale and Pasadena. It was originally settled as a community in the 20s and 30s. It was one of the first places in the Northeast that wasn't redlined. So it had a small but vibrant Black community, which was rare up there at the time. But it is in the county. It is not in the city. Right now, the totals for the Eaton fire are 17 dead, 24 missing. And it is in Catherine Barger's area. It has nothing to do with the city, and she's a Republican. So it's a working class neighborhood. A lot of my friends lived up there. A lot of artists live up there. A lot of people, the lower end of the film industry, and a lot of working class people have lived there for years. Really great, wonderful place. It's where a lot of people moved after they got priced out of Silver Lake and Echo Park when they were able to buy a house. And it's a damn shame. I've had several friends that lost everything up there. So has absolutely nothing to do with Karen Bass or the city of Los Angeles. And unlike the city of Los Angeles, the county has tons of money, but they were also unprepared.
So why has there been no attention to the county? Is it just we only want to understand things like this through the lens of, well, there's a mayor in a city, and this is technically in the county, but it's kind of the city, so let's just blame the mayor. And she's the mayor of LA, which is one of the largest cities in the country.
Right. But the county of Los Angeles would be the seventh largest state in the country. It only has 5 supervisors. They each have 2.5 million constituents, and they don't want you to know who they are. They never have. They used to call them the 5 kings, and most people didn't know who their supervisors were, and they liked it that way because it's got a history of corruption and a lot of money. Their terms are 5 years, not 4. And they get 3 of them. So, they're around for a while. Currently, it's the 5 queens. And if you go to most Angelenos, a lot of Angelenos don't even know if they live in the city or they live in the county. And they certainly don't know who their county supervisor is, even though, if you live in Altadena, that's where your fires come from. And I found this very intriguing because a big portion, not the whole portion, a lot of the Palisades fire is in the city, but Malibu and a lot of other portions were in the county, and Lindsay Horvath, that's her area. I think there's a tinge of racism there. And also I think Karen's political advisors who let her go to Ghana should never be able to work with anybody ever again. I think that's
wow.
Malpractice.
Well, there was a warning. There was a warning about the fires beforehand, right?
The Weather Service had it dead on, and when lots of people in LA knew what was coming or felt that might come, and the fact that what's her deputy mayor Zeidel that used to work with her when she was in the Congress and now is the deputy mayor. He's terrible. I mean, he should be summarily fired. But I think the problem with being a mayor of Los Angeles is it's not as powerful as the president of the city council, but you're the face. And I think a lot of people think that might be something that you can use to move up, but it hasn't worked out for Antonio, and it hasn't worked out for Eric. I have a friend that knows Karen quite well. I know one of the reasons that she ran was this is another part of politics I'm not sure most people know. If you're a congressman for either party, you spend 4 hours in the afternoon like a toner salesman dialing for dollars. And I know she hated that because she told a friend of mine she hated it. So, I don't know. She ran for mayor. But yeah, I find it interesting that there's all this punching down on her. And then, Catherine starts the press conference and then shuffles to the side And the fire in the Eaton fire's just as big as the Palisades fire, has more deaths, more destruction, and it's a working class neighborhood, and nobody says anything. Plus, all these MAGA people jumping on talking about it's a Democratic run city. Well, that area, that 5th district, has been run by the Republicans forever. So I don't know what they're talking about.
One of the things that I find really, really egregious, and I wanted to call Jason early on because he's kind of my go-to expert for all things California when I see this, is that the way I was seeing this being politicized, particularly by the right, as some kind of failure of democratic governance, really annoyed me. Can you talk about why it was so easy for it to be framed in that way, and why we on the left kind of allowed the Republicans to get away with that?
That's interesting, Pascal, because I've thought about this. I years ago I did a project. Jason knows this, but I was traveling a bit in the Middle East, and right now I'm working on a project in Paraguay, and pretty much every country in the world, the city people are the more sophisticated liberal people, and the people out in the countryside are the more rural, often more religious people. And that's how our country is. So most of the big cities are run by more liberal people. Um, Unfortunately, and I've said this, I know there's probably people who watch this show that can't stand Eric Garcetti, but if you get a chance to talk with Eric, you realize very quickly he's one of the smartest people that you'll ever meet. And he got crushed by the city. And Antonio Villaraigosa is a smart guy. These big cities might be ungovernable, but the people who live there tend to be on the Democratic side. And so they're in charge of these ungovernable cities. I mean, it's the city of Los Angeles is an aircraft carrier. It's not a PT boat. But when you have something like this, you need a PT boat, That's part of it. And these are big, big institutions. There's a lot of people inside those institutions who block everything. But why we allow them to say this is a democratic issue, I honestly don't know, Pascal. I think it's an easy sell, and I think the media historically has let them get away with it. And oh, somebody's put it's Chinatown. By the way, it's funny. You have these fires, and all of a sudden, people. Did you know Chinatown's about the water in L.A.? It's like, yeah. Like, have you not seen the movie? Like,
Well,
so
well,
does that answer you, Pascal, at all, or?
No, I get a sense of what you're saying here, and that in terms of it's the realpolitik of how things are framed in this country, coming down to the right versus the left, and unfortunately, in a complex political reality, it's easy to cast aspersions to one side. Complexity, we don't do well with complexity in America.
No, we don't.
no.
And that's one of the reasons I mentioned that Catherine Barger is a Republican, because I don't think most people know she's a Republican, because everybody says everyone in LA is a Democrat.
Well, you said something. You said something. You talked about the difference between the county and the city. Now, let me ask you, because we have a similar thing in Miami-Dade County, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miami-Dade County is the county. The city of Miami is a city in Miami-Dade County.
Right.
Now, is the city of Los Angeles in LA County?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes. So in historically, there's two types of governments in city government nationwide. I live in Athens, Georgia. Okay. Athens Clark County is a city county. San Francisco is a city county. So, like when you're the mayor of San Francisco, you're also the head of the county of San Francisco. Los Angeles, which a lot of places are, the city is one entity and it's inside this bigger county entity. It's the same thing up in Seattle. Seattle is in King County, but there is also the King County government. and it's just a different style of governing. I've never really known the history of why is San Francisco a city county? Why is Athens, Georgia a city county? Why is Seattle and Los Angeles a city within a county? If anybody knows in the uh, chat, go ahead and let us know. It's not something I probably should have looked it up a long time ago. Probably should have looked it up last night. Anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Well, this leads me to my first question for you. First main question, I guess. How has capitalist motives driven the construction of luxury homes in regions known for wildfires, prioritizing profit over environmental considerations? I know Malibu is not in LA County, but I believe the Palisades, which is near there, is in LA County.
Okay. Malibu is in LA County.
It was in Ventura County.
Not most of it. Most of it, I think, is in LA County.
Okay.
Because I looked it up last night. I think it's mostly in LA County.
Okay.
And the city of Los Angeles, the city of Malibu is very similar to the city of West Hollywood. It's it's the fire department and the sheriff's department from the county are the first responders and law enforcement and fire department. But within that, see, that's the thing. It's like you have these cities like Burbank and Glendale. They have their own fire departments. Pasadena has its own fire department. Malibu does not have its own fire department. Neither does West Hollywood or their own law enforcement. Where the fire was in Altadena, that's completely unincorporated, completely the county jurisdiction. So, and I know this is all very confusing and
No,
goofy.
it is. You know, as I'm a Bay Area native, so it's slightly different where I'm from. But I did live in an unincorporated part of town for a while, a city called Bay Point, which is unincorporated. So you dealt with sheriffs when it came
Right.
to and deputies when it came to law enforcement because they didn't have their own
Right.
police department. But it definitely wasn't a place where we were afraid of wildfires. Now, somewhere like Malibu, for those people that don't know where Malibu is on a map, it's a beautiful coastal city with these gajillion-dollar mansions and all the famous people you can imagine live in them. And they had wildfires. What, in '93? There was a bunch of wildfires.
They had a big wildfire in December.
Was it December when that fire was?
Yes, they had
one a
fire
few in 2018 too, right? 2018 there was a big fire.
Oh, they have
too,
fires
right?
practically every year. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and see now that's why Mike Davis, the article Let Malibu Burn, because
Yeah.
yes, I think historically, I don't know what's going to happen this time, but historically, rich people seem to get FEMA money faster than poor people. I'm not sure how that works, you know. Um, I'm joking. I do know how that
Yeah.
works, but um, you know, and you know, rich people rebuild those houses all the time because they want to, you know, have a house on the beach, and a lot of times they also have the money to do it. And then, you know, one of the problems with like the whole getting insurance money and FEMA is, you know, if you're just a regular like I have friends right now, they're trying to find an apartment, they have no place to live, and they
Yeah.
just jump the because, and I've been asking this question, if an apartment is empty, the city and the state have really no ability to like if it was for rent yesterday for 3,000 and tomorrow it's for rent for 6,000, they don't really have any ability to do anything about that. In California, we do have you know, rent controls statewide and often citywide and those kinds of things. But if it was sitting there empty, the fires happened, they're jumping the rates like, you know, it's, you know, you already had a housing crisis,
Yeah.
and there, I mean, and it changes every day. So please, the chat, don't hold me to this. But last I heard, it was like 15,000 structures, and about 80 to 90% of them were homes. So if you go on the low end, what's that, 13,000 homes? That's a lot of homes to lose in a in a city and even a county has a housing crisis. Um, that would be a lot of homes to lose if it wasn't a housing crisis, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Is there
and
ever any?
that's what's go
Go ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say,
No,
is there ever any talk in city government about maybe trying to stop some of the rebuilds in places like Malibu or even the Palisades, or do you just not want to mess with those rich people, lawyers?
I think it's going to go the other way, Jason. I think there's going to be a big push to have less restrictions, and in fact, Karen's already said that. And that was
Oh,
one of the things she was headed towards with the homelessness issues. Her whole thing of like, I want things permitted in 90 days. It's
mhm.
like, if you've been in the city of Los Angeles, try and get an email back in 90 days from the planning commission. It's like, or the planning department. It's um, I think they're going to go the other way. I think they're going to try and build back as fast as they can, and I think they're going to try and find ways to have fewer restrictions, not less. That's just what I'm reading.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been talking to my friends in Los Angeles, and I've been talking to some of my constituents, but and it's a weird thing. It's like they just had the election.
Yeah.
CD 14. They they got the new member, and she's uh, um, she's a housing rights lawyer.
Mhm.
Nobody can find them because they kind of took over at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Nobody has their phone numbers. CD 14, like when you leave the city, they turn your phones off fast. So all those people over there, and that's right below Altadena. They had all the smog. They had a bunch of eviction notices, and I'm not. That there should be better transitions for everybody, but and I can only imagine what it's like. I mean, you have a I think she's in her 30s. She's been a housing rights attorney. The
Mhm.
city of LA is a beast. She's trying
Mhm.
to hire staff, and she's walking right into this, and fortunately, see, every what I'm getting right now is it's kind of getting back to normal in most of LA. Obviously,
Mhm.
not in Altadena, not in the Palisades. But the smoke is cleared. The eviction notices are all starting to end. People are getting back in their houses if they had to leave. And the city's kind of getting back to normal. But you know,
Is the priority to kind of, I don't know if the city really has to fund a rebuild for a place like Malibu, but, or I'm sorry, the Palisades. But a place like Altadena, like you said, there's tons of working class people there. I haven't really heard too much talk about Altadena. And when we talk about wildfires, sometimes we don't talk about other areas. Like before Mike Davis died, he did an interview on one of Jackman's radio shows that don't exist anymore. And he talked about two wildfires that were going on at around the same time, which was Malibu, and then there was another one way up north in a city that I believe doesn't even exist anymore called Paradise. And
oh, Paradise got wiped out. That's way
Paradise
up
got
in
out,
that's up by
and Paradise,
Shasta.
way up north. And I actually have friends that are from there that I met doing music. But anyway, um, with Paradise, I have a lower class community. I don't even want to say working class because I think the majority of the people that lived in the city were retirees. And I think it was some figure like 60% of the population was disabled because they were retired. And this was the only place they could afford to live in California. So, one thing we don't really talk about, or one thing I've seen people talk about, and I don't really think they understand the landscape of the state, They just understand the headline of Mike Davis essay from 30 years ago. But when you go, well, motherfuckers don't know shit. When you go to Northern California, which is not
Right.
the Bay Area, right? 6 hours north of where I'm from, 5 hours north of where I'm from, is a very lush green area. Northern California and pretty much Southern Oregon all look the same. Wouldn't know one from the other. It's
Very
green
true.
valley, mountain passes. And so as people were getting pushed out financially of even Northern California, where there's not a big industry, so wages are low, Paradise gets built out. And it's just a kind of a retirement community where older people can afford to live. I think the median cost of a house around the time of the fire was about a couple $100,000, which in California is extremely expensive. So when that city burned down, it was extremely tragic because now you have these people that don't really have anywhere to go.
Well, that's going to be the interesting thing with Altadena.
Mhm.
There's been so much focus on, the celebrities in the Palisades,
Yeah.
but the people in Altadena, even like, yeah, some of them are like, work in the film industry, but
Mhm.
I think what people don't understand is just how expensive LA has been. And there are people who, like, technically they're making these big salaries, but when you take out the cost of living in Los Angeles, they're almost eating ramen, especially, and if they have kids and the kids are going to go to college. I mean, I have two very good friends, and I went to their wedding 30 years ago, and they the fire came down so fast in Altadena. They've had that house for 25 years. They got out with the clothes on their back, their kids, their dog, and their car, and that's it. And some friends of ours put up a GoFundMe, and that's going to help a little bit. But it's like they're out there trying to find rentals. There are none, and they've jacked the rates up. They're, they spent a couple days in one of the, um, I forget which one. I don't know if it was the Fairplex or whatever, but and he, sadly, he was working for WME forever, but he's like a mid-level agent guy, and because the film industry is in the toilet, he got laid off in August, and his kids are about to go to college. I mean, it's like, and I know there's probably people go like, oh, but their kids are going to college. It's like, but these are they're working class people too. And then, I read this great story about this black family. They had been working. They were able to buy a house in Altadena, and they had bought their family had bought all 8 houses in the neighborhood, like the son, the daughter, because they were able to. All 8 houses are gone. You know,
Mm.
how are they going to build back? I don't know. You know, um, I didn't get the impression they were, you know, they certainly weren't, big movie stars or anything. This was like a working class family who had worked hard to get, the ability to buy these houses, and it created this, little family community in Altadena, which is this, that's kind of what Altadena was, you
Yeah.
know, and the other thing that's going back to the whole thing about, because the film I'm working on, not to be promoting my stuff, but you know uh, it's sort of about happiness and unhappiness, and America and Paraguay, and I'm using the eclipse for metaphor, but I'm going to be putting in these I got an opportunity. There's this great economist that I met in Paraguay, and he used to work for the World Bank, and then he was teaching in the U.S., and he loves Paraguay, and he's down there. He's the one that talked me into buying a house down there. I just had to send him 10 grand to finish it. But he was going over some stats that I don't think most Americans know. We have the second highest wealth disparity in the world. Our middle class is shrinking, whereas most South American, the middle class is expanding. Our life expectancy has dropped 2 years in the last 3 years. We're one of the few countries that's true of. And I started the project because of our just ridiculous amount of drug overdose and suicide deaths, which are like, there's no country even close to us in drug overdose deaths. And now our suicides are rising to, I think we're now like 11th in the world. It's like, and I think a lot of it has to do, it's not just capitalism, it's that we're raised to be selfish and think that money is the be all end all. And that feeds into capitalism. It's like, but I almost think it's bigger than the poison of capitalism. And I'm not even sure we're a capitalist country anymore, because it's, what Princeton said 20 years
You
ago,
think it's
we're
a
an
feudal? You
oligarchy.
think we're in the
I think
neo
we're in a feudal.
feudalism
Yes, I think yes, and I think
Giannis Firefox talks about?
and I
Pascal,
don't.
do you want to add something?
Say it, Josh. Motherfuckers calls it techno feudalism.
No feudalism.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The age that we're in now. That well, I mean, one of the things that becomes realistic is that the power of the oligarchies to influence government is increasing, and the dissatisfaction with the state of affairs is also increasing. And you were talking about how people are actually dying younger, while at the same time the Social Security retirement age went up 2 years last year, as a matter of fact. So it's like all of our infrastructure is not moving in line with the realities in which people are facing in our society, and the concentration of world wealth is getting worse. And I don't see a lot of sympathy for people who are suffering these kind of disasters. We talk about the earthquakes. We talk about the fires we had in California. I know last year in November we had horrible hurricanes in Florida and North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And I had I live 2 hours from Asheville, and I have friends who were just driving up there, and they said it's not, it's bad still.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was Raleigh, right? I thought, was it Asheville or Raleigh where the
it was
fires were?
Asheville. Asheville got just, parts of it just got leveled, because it's next to the river, and that's like, what's interesting is how we live our lives. Like, it's like, well, Asheville must be fine because we're not hearing about it now. We're hearing about the fires, and I think the thing to me about LA is like, I was just saying, because what I'm hearing is just kind of getting back to normal and everything, right? And that's true. But this is the start, not the end. Like, there's whole sections of the city that have been leveled.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you need big government. This is when it's supposed to be like, I don't know. What do you think,
when you need
Pascal?
federal help?
No, I mean, I listen. One of the things that to me is most dangerous about the political climate that we have been in for the last 40 years is this notion that government bad, that government can't do anything, that government is the problem. And when you have that combined with this ever-present urge to cut taxes that forces the government to be incompetent because you can't finance the government, then we can't see the ability for us to have nice things. And that explains why people like Trump having these kind of kabuki theater type cabinets where he has all these unqualified people is part of the agenda of demonstrating and proving people that government can't do anything for you. So you should expect that we have these kabuki theater type administrations because government isn't good for you anyway. And that's part of the establishment in terms of how we're viewing things. And it's been bipartisan. I remember Clinton ran a party on that. The
Yes, it did.
government is not the answer, it's part of the problem. And we have to realize that the problems that we have as a society cannot be rendered off to Elon Musk and oligarchs to answer because they are answering to their shareholders. We need a fiscally responsible yet caring governance to maintain infrastructure to help protect the working class people from the harsh realities of what's going on in the world out there.
I couldn't agree more. And also the one thing that's interesting, I mean, LA is seriously underfunded. And everybody down there thinks, oh, I pay so much in taxes. They actually pay less than I do in Athens, Georgia. But the budget is it's terrible, you know? And they did some things a year ago, and this was Karen and the city council who did this. And you know, they gave away. I wish I'd stayed an extra year because now they're letting everybody cash out all of their sick pay. I was sick one day, and you get to keep it year to year. I think I left $70,000 at least on the table.
Damn.
And had I known she was going to do something, and what's happened is, so all those people are retiring, and so you're paying a bunch of people who aren't working. They are they're when I left, there were 1,000 sanitation workers down. Now I hear they're 2,000. How does this affect fires? If you don't clean the streets, that's what the sparks hit, right? They're underfunded. They have one of the lowest amount of firefighters per capita. One of the things that really sparked these fires was the fact that for 2 days they couldn't take the copters up because that's how they've been
Yeah, the
masking.
winds were so crazy.
Because
To
those
give
copters
people
have saved everybody.
those winds were nuts because we got hit with Santa Ana's down here in northern Baja. And if you guys remember, I was doing shows from different places in Tijuana because it's just a better infrastructure in that city. But just I was walking around my neighborhood, which I do live on a dirt road, and it looks like I live on a dirt road, right? So, but the power lines were just down. The wind had blew those huge poles, took them right off the. You know, they're stuck pretty deep in the ground, and they were just all over the place. Definitely, we don't have trees here, cactus, but it was crazy seeing the damage that the winds had did here. And again, when I went to LA Wednesday, I think that's the day the fires really kicked in, was Wednesday. I was driving to someone's house, and the moment I got to Orange County, what's the freeway you take to get to Orange County? The 73 you can take to get to Orange County for driving up north from San Diego?
Oh God, I get them all confused. There's a 22 down there and
There's,
a
I
5
can't
and
remember
a,
which one I was on, but the moment I hit that freeway and I got to Orange County, the wind just blew my car into another lane,
oh
and I
yeah,
had
no,
to.
it's
It was
yeah.
nuts.
There's some places down there where if you're not careful and you're just kind of cruising along, listen to chill music, your car can slide over like 8 lanes.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
it's
I
crazy.
was.
Yeah.
Thank God I was driving at like 2 or no, I think it was 3 in the morning.
So
So I was safe, but man.
So I do want to say one thing about like what happened with the budget. The people, Kenneth Mejia, who some people consider a communist, he might even consider himself a communist.
Mhm.
he's been on this all the way through, right? He's the controller. And nobody listened to him because, there's just too many powers that be. But the three that voted against the budget were Ulysses, Hugo, and Nithya. And there's things I disagree with those three about, but they were right to question the budget, and there should have been more questioning of the budget, obviously, because they're broke and they don't have any firefighters and they don't have any sanitation workers, and they paid a lot of money out to people who are leaving, and they also paid a bunch. They also paid a bunch of money out in lawsuits that they just settled, and it's coming back to bite them. And now you have this. You're asking how you're going to rebuild. Well, the city's not going to be able to rebuild. They don't have any money.
I do want to ask you about the rich homeowners that have private fire hydrants.
Well, that's been going on forever. Like most HOAs have their own fire hydrants.
Okay.
So that's. But yes, I mean, but I'd say the bigger question is, why do we let rich people out of being part of society? Why do we go to airports and the rich people get to go on first? Why do we
Mhm.
have, you know, highways now that, like, there's a set of lanes for us plebes, and then there's another set for the people who can afford the
The
pass,
toll.
and it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and it's like, once you start separating people out and they're no longer a community and they're no longer working together, it's kind of like what Pascal said. It's like, it's um you starve the system, and then people go, I'm going to vote for Trump, or whatever, and
Mhm.
I as you know, and I'm gonna toot my horn a little bit. I did work for 14 weeks with Donald Trump on a show called Apprentice LA, and we did everything we could, and our ratings went in the toilet, and he got canceled, and that reality film crew. I was making a documentary on the side, and I needed money. I worked on a camera crew on Apprentice LA. We did everything we could to put a stop to that man, and y'all started watching Celebrity Apprentice afterwards, and so it's on you. Like our film crew, we did everything we could. So I have no guilt about any of this, you know.
Um, when you worked on Celebrity Apprentice, how bad was it working around Donald Trump? It just seems like he
No, he's a
just shows
slug.
up.
No, he sits there and says nothing. The kids are a pain in the ass. The only one that was Eric was fine, but he was like 19 at the time, and he was just like, a lunkhead frat kid at that point. But Donald Jr., when he was around, was a bit of a dick, and Ivanka's just horrible.
Oof.
But you know, the Donald was like, and I'm not gonna tell. There's a story I can tell. The one thing about the Donald is he's extremely vindictive, and I saw him eviscerate a hot shot reality. Yes, reality shows have directors and writers,
Mhm.
but he eviscerated this young hotshot director. And the one thing I always said about him is that he's fairly smart, in that none of us liked that director because he was an asshole. So
Mhm.
he's smart enough to not pick. He doesn't pick on the PA, right? He went after this director that we all hated, and then we were all getting paid to watch him do this, so we didn't care. We were just having a hard time not laughing while it was going on.
Do
Um,
you remember anything he said to the director?
well, what happened? Okay, so I'm going to try and make this quick. I don't want to make this all about
No,
so
no,
and
we
so.
can
Me
derail
Brett.
for a little bit. We
So
all love the T spelling, as they say.
so 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 the way that the show worked is you have these setups, right? they're like called setups, where the whole crew, and you film all the contestants, and so he comes out there and goes, "This week you will be working at Taco Bell and competing with each other, and whoever sells the most tacos," right? And
Yeah.
and it's like this week, and that's actually 2 days on the show, is the week. So anyway, so yeah, so the contestants are all standing there like, we're going to, like, and so the way you shape reality shows is, you get the participants, whether it's the main person like Donald or the contestants, you get them to say things in interviews, right? But
Mhm.
you don't physically script it, right? So even Donald, right, is not fully scripted. He's scripted a little bit, but so the young director's there, and he's going like, "Well, I need you to say such and such," and the Donald looks at him and goes, "I'm not saying that," and he goes, and he kind of pauses, and he goes, "Well, can you say maybe this?" And he's like, "Nope," and he's like, "Well, I really need you to say something like this." He's like, "I'm not saying it." And then there's a pause, and the kid starts to talk again. He was like maybe 31, 32. He was like your typical Hollywood up and comer. And and then suddenly Donald says, "In fact, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I don't want
Whoa.
to talk to you," right? And this kid starts to say something. He says, "I said I am not talking to you." Now, he's not just the star of the show, he's one of the executive producers, right?
Mhm.
So now this kid's there, and he doesn't know what to do, right? And because it's what you call a stand-up, there's the whole crew's there. There's like 160 of us, right? So
Damn.
this is expensive. I mean, everybody's on payroll, right? Now, we're all getting paid, so we don't give a shit. And we don't like this guy, right? And so we're just watching this. And like I said, we're trying not to laugh because, that might go south, right? So then they go and get one of the producers, right? And
Mhm.
he tries to interject, and Donald says, I told you I'm not talking to this guy. So we're all standing there. They had to send up the hill to get like one of the Burnett executive producers to drive down and mediate this, and he agreed to he would talk to him, and then he would talk to the director, and then the director would try to talk to him. And this went on for like 45 minutes, and then we finally got it. We got through that, and we never saw that young director again.
Damn. Damn, he was
And he
done.
Well, I don't know that he was done, because he came off a Survivor, and I'm sure he went on to other things. But is kind of like watching. I've been on an Altamont kick. It was kind of like watching Mick Jagger halfway through trying to plead with the crowd and the Hells Angels.
Hells Angels stop killing each other.
Suddenly Mick is not. He's like, please, brothers, sisters.
We're
Okay,
just
now
4 months out from Woodstock. What the fuck?
so let's get back to the serious stuff. 'Cause this is serious. What's going on?
Well,
And
well, what one of the things I do want to talk about is kind of the state's lag in enforcing laws designed to make homes more fire resistant. Um, how difficult is that to do for new builds? I know your district probably wasn't in a fire zone, was it?
um, I saw that question, and I don't have a good answer to that.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, everything that I've read and heard has been going the other way, and this is where it gets difficult. Is we need to build housing. Homelessness went up 18% nationwide last year,
Yeah.
but we also need to build housing because people that make good livings like I said, are eating ramen because they can't afford their rent. You know,
Mhm.
what's that guy from New York? The rent's too damn high. But that's nationwide, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I know it's really hard to build in Los Angeles, and they need to build
Mhm.
more housing. At the same time, I remember years ago there was an earthquake in Istanbul, and the 1,400-year-old mosque all survived, and the apartment buildings that they had built in the last 20 years all fell.
Mhm.
That's what happens when you don't have restrictions on how you build, right?
Mhm.
Um, so you need to have rules and regulations, and that's where you really want thoughtful government people, because you're never going to be able to make something 100% safe, right? And you have to find that nexus, and I'm not, that's not my expertise, right? But you need to have that nexus where people are safe, but you're able to build housing. And I, I I I think that includes like figuring out, making places more safe for fires, make more safe for. I mean, that's the other one, is it's like there's no doubt that we have climate change.
Mhm.
The only debate there is how much of it is man-made and how much of it isn't man-made. And I've always thought that was one of the most bizarre things that I've always heard, mostly from the conservatives. It's like, well, it's not, a lot of it's not man-made. It's like, well, then we're
Yeah.
even more screwed, because if it's not man-made, then we really have to work hard, because we're not, we don't have control over it. At least if some of it's man-made, we have some control. But there's no doubt that there's climate change, and there's no doubt that there's weather change, and there's no doubt that it's affecting us, you know? So the whole, how much of it's man-made, how much of it's not, is kind of a moot point, in my opinion. I
But,
could be wrong.
doesn't that demonstrate how far we are from people being sincere while trying to resolve the issue? We're still stuck asking these kind of questions.
Yes, that is the problem. And you said something great earlier, because I've said this, almost all of these things they're not simple questions or solutions. And they really take thoughtful people working together to find solutions. And it's kind of like AA, but if you're not willing to even admit you have a problem, you're probably never going to find the solution. And I think one of the worst things is that what happens with government, unfortunately, is a lot of thoughtful people get involved, and then they're like, I can't take this. And that's not good either. So you're right. You're absolutely right. But think about it this way: when you're at the march, and you have a sign that says it's complicated, do you think you're going to get on a local news? I don't think so. You're going to have like down with so and so. You know,
Yeah. Do you think this is
it's.
going to be disastrous for Karen Bass as far as any
I think
idea
she's. I think
for the
she's
election?
done. I think
You
she's
think she's
toast.
toast off this? Really?
Yeah, I think she should. If I were her, I'm not. I'm guessing this is not how she's thinking right now. I would announce that I'm not running for reelection. I'm going to spend the next 2 years doing everything I can to help the people after this fire. I don't think she can win. And like I said, and it's not fair. It's not fair,
Mhm.
because Lindsay Horvath will win, and it's on her watch
Caruso won't
too.
run again. The
I
rich
think Caruso will
billionaire.
run again, and I've talked to enough people. They're thinking about the good old days with Richard Riordan. You know,
Mm.
and he's the guy that came in after the riots, and the earthquake happened at the beginning of his, but nobody, you don't get blamed for earthquakes really. um, but he was a Republican businessman. He came in, and he's still quite beloved in LA,
Well, I
and
kind of wanted to ask about that. So Caruso has I think a shopping mall or
yes,
shopping
well,
center in LA.
he has the what's the one down there on Third Street with the farmers market? He's the one in Glendale, and he
Mhm.
has, oh God, see, I'm getting old and I lose my train of thought here, but
Where
it's
what
the famous mall that
the
the
Beverly Center?
farmers market is. What's that?
Not the Beverly Center.
No, not the Beverly Center. Um,
Mhm.
what's it called? It's oh God, hold on. I'm gonna get my phone out, and you're gonna force me
And
to
look it up.
go to the phone.
Well, I'll ask this question to you and Pascal. I believe he had his own private fire team that protected his building,
He did.
and right-wing media has been touting this as the reason why governments fail and why you need to deregulate. Um,
Which
how do you look?
who's been touting that?
Uh, for some reason, I have no idea how this happened. I get the Blaze emailed to me. So
The
their
what?
headlines are always the Blaze, which is a right-wing site and paper. I think, what's that guy's name that runs it, Pascal? The right-wing white guy?
Is that Ben Shapiro?
No, the older guy. It doesn't matter. Some white guy that's got a black friend and says the word. But how do you feel about that when it comes to like these large private companies being able to have the access to fire retardant chemicals, to have the access to have their own private fire departments? I mean, that kind of thing happened in Malibu as well.
Well,
Um,
that goes to what we've been talking about with Pascal. Is like we're becoming it's not just that the 1% are getting the majority of the money. It's like, they're the only ones that can afford, healthcare. They're the only ones who can afford fire departments, I guess now. And it's just like we've I don't know how the country holds like that,
mhm,
um but it's like, now that I'm not working for the city and I can say whatever I want, I am working. I am waiting for the women of Paris to storm the Bastille, because that's always been one of my favorite stories, because they always talk about, like, if you get together and organize, that they'll be able to stop you because of the police and everything.
mhm,
And you go back and you look at this history, and it's like the soldiers who were guarding the Bastille, when they looked out and they saw thousands of women, right?
mhm,
They were like,
mhm,
"Let me hold the door for you." It's like numbers matter. I mean, it is true. Like, the biggest guy wins the fight most of the time. But if you join together 20 guys, you can beat up just about anybody. So, and that worked. It was the women of Paris who started that revolution.
mhm.
Um, Now it did go haywire and a little crazy, and they ended up with Napoleon. But Napoleon wasn't bad. He's just, you know just wanted to take over the world.
What do you say about that, Pascal? Private fire departments
I mean, it's
in
the height
as
of
well.
neoliberalism, man. It's like you get these private companies coming in and taking in over the public spaces. When you have no public thoroughfare that has a responsibility to the public, has no fiduciary responsibility to the public, you pay taxes to a private company that has no fiduciary responsibility to you. That means
Right.
that they can up services, they can down services, and you have no way of using governmental facilities to lodge complaints against them because they're a private company that's only responsive and responsible to the shareholders.
I couldn't agree more. You know, and we're doing it more and more and more. I mean, it's everything. Everything is privatized, right? We don't think of it as privatization, but I've been flying a lot recently, and like, it's like by the time listed off all these people, and I don't even know how you get on these special lists, right? But it's like, you know, and then now they take your suitcase away from you. Well, you know, you're in number 6, so give us your suitcase. But yeah, I mean, everything is been siphoned out to, you know, um, if you have money, you know, you get a fire department. If you, I mean, our healthcare system is the worst. I mean, it's,
Oof.
you know, and it's become like, if you're rich, you get healthcare, and you know, I'm old now, so I have Medicare. Medicare's that whole Medicare for all bullshit. Medicare is not that great, and they've been recently, you know, because I went through it with my mom, you know, when she was passing away, and I
Mhm.
realized some of this stuff, like they were supposed to pay for stuff and they just didn't. And I was so focused on taking care of my mom, I just sat down with her. I said, "We're going to use your savings account," and I put her in a nice, you know, um, uh, assisted living, and they
Convalescent.
were
Yeah.
great. But I paid for all of that, right? And she was more worried about it than I was. You know, she's like, "Well, what are you going to do when I pass away? You don't have much savings." And you know, you know, she didn't. Anyway, the point is, like, um, you know, had I thought about it, but but that's where they get you, is like, you have your parent, right? You're not going to fight to get what Medicare should be paying, right? And it's the same with your loved ones, your wife, whatever. It's like, so they've got you over a barrel because what, you're going to fight 5 years to get them to pay what they're supposed to? No, you're going to take care of your loved one. And you know, other countries, it's not like that. You know, it's anyway. So let's talk back about the fires. Yes. So yes, Caruso had people, you know, taking care of. I guess he had some small shopping mall up there in the Palisades.
And does that take away though resources that people need to fight the fires for the working class people that can't afford their own private fire department?
Well, of course it's going to, because your top fire people are going to take those jobs, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and yeah, I mean, it has to, and it's also going to, you know, I so how do we stop being a tech oligarchy? You know, um,
That's a point that I haven't seen too many people make. That you and Pascal just kind of hit on the fact that when you have private fire departments, you're probably going to make more money with less qualifications. Kind of like
no, I
charter
think they're
schools.
going to go. I think they're going to go after the best qualified people. They're just going to steal them. What you're going to have is the public's going to train them up,
Mhm.
and then when they're really good, they're going to be taken by the, you know, the tech oligarchs. You know. Oh, by the
Like
way,
pilots.
there's one thing I wanted to talk about on this show today, because there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
misinformation on the left and the right. Okay, so because you asked me about this a long time ago. So when they were talking about, and they did a terrible job explaining it. When they talk about the 1,000 inmates who fight fires, right?
Thank you for talking about this.
Okay, those are people who go to fire camp. Okay. And what fire camp is, and I can speak to this because I used to go up there and speak to the little knuckleheads about how to, not do drugs and drink. Anyway, they take people that don't that they don't think will do well at Chino, because if you've been out to Chino, as I have, it's not nice. So they take mostly young people and they offer them a slot at fire camp. It's a medium. Like if I took you up to fire camp, other than the fact that they're all dressed the same,
Mm-hmm.
you would just think that it's like a outward bound camp or something, or
Gotcha.
the kind of camp that they used to send Western kids to during the summer, because we don't do tennis and all that crap. But they train every day to fight fires, and it's a volunteer program. It's offered to them, and I heard rich people, I heard this through my ex, that rich people were upset that they were letting convicts into their houses out in the Palisades. And then I heard from my activist friends that, there's a rumor this is slave labor. It's like, it's a volunteer program. And let me put it to you this way. If your choice is walking the yard in Chino or going to fire camp, believe me, you're going to take fire camp. And I'll tell you a quick note about Chino when you go out there to speak. First time I went out there, they go, and remember, don't wear denim. And I said, what? I said, don't wear denim. And I said, why don't you wear denim? He goes like, well, because if something goes haywire, they shoot at the denim. And I'm like,
Damn.
I will be wearing.
Yeah. Post Attica, they take no
suit,
hostages. Yeah. They don't negotiate with hostages. Post Attica.
I just always remember they shoot at the denim. I'm like, right, okay. Note to self. Thanks for telling me that. Appreciate it. Yeah. So the 1,000 people that go out there and fight fires, they are trained. My biggest complaint, and I talked to the LA Fire Department about this, is I wish that fire departments would hire these kids after they come out, because a lot of times they aren't hired when they come out, and they've got all this training, and that's like the
But that goes into
unit. Go ahead.
that goes into several facets of incarcerated labor that I think people have fucked off understanding of. Like, a lot of the labor that goes on there is just upkeep of the prison, people working in the dentist office, people working in the hospital, people working in the kitchen. You are going to learn a skill. Like, I have a friend here who committed a capital felony. She was deported, but she worked in the dentist office for, I think, of her 24 years inside, I think like over 10. That's a lot of experience, real-time experience, working side by side with the dentist and people. You should be able to just walk right into some sort of dental assistant gig, but because you have a capital offense on your record,
I think that's the biggest thing. And I saw a couple people put something in the thing. It's like, yeah, I guess it's still bonded labor. I'm not going to defend the prison industrial system. It's horrible, and we lock way too many people up in the United States. And the reason that they'd rather do fire camp than Chino is because it's really, really, really nasty out at Chino. But you're right. I mean, if they were able to take these skills out more often and use them, and that's why, like, the Carpenters Union has a great program for people who have been incarcerated, that they get them into the program there, and they learn how to be carpenters, and they've been doing that for a while, and it's great, because it's bad enough that we lock all those people up, but then if they're not allowed back in society, like, what do you expect them to do?
Yeah, that's my big point is I think there is a pathway. It's a narrow pathway, because also, again, all this stuff depends on what you're convicted of, and does your employer want to hire you with a record? I think people. I would ask this question to people, not to say that it's right not to hire people with a record. I'm coming from the opposite perspective. But how many people do you know with a legit criminal record of a violent crime? We're not talking about quote unquote non-violent drug offenses. Would you be comfortable to hire? And
don't know.
I think
I got 3 young people I'm working with at a treatment place where they all have to get their cards signed, and I don't know if I'd hire any of them, but I do work with them. I haven't told them where, and I haven't told them where I live either. We meet at coffee shops.
like yeah, if you
But
have a felony on your record and you're trying to get a job and you've been
right.
inside for a long period of time, there's only a couple things you can do. Maybe
Well,
sell a car, maybe
no,
sell a
but
house.
I will sell you, like here in Athens where we have a housing crisis and everything.
Mhm.
All of them get hired to do contracting. Most of them,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they do get hired, and but that gets into, that's another thing is and just a completely different show. But one of the things that a lot of us are worried right now about is what you call recovery capitalism, um,
Oh, okay.
where,
Preach on it.
well, recovery capitalism is there's been a large rise over the last 20 to 25 years in for-profit rehab facilities. And usually what they do is they put them on a bus and take them out and tell them to get a sponsor in an AA meeting. And I'm like, well, you don't have to pay 50 grand a month to do that. And the ones, Athens has a whole bunch of them, and they've gotten, they all got a bunch of money from they just started sending out the 38 state opioid settlement money. But, it's better when you work with people for fun and for free. A lot of these kids, they're put in these programs, and then because they have to pay, they graduate,
Mhm.
and like a month later they're loaded because they're not there voluntarily. They don't listen, and they'll tell you, well, at least they're being introduced to recovery, but our I don't know. And I'm participating in it. I go over there and I get these 3 lunkheads, um and I'm allowed to call them lunkheads because they're my lunkheads. But I try and tell them stuff, but it's like at the same time I'm kind of sitting there like, why am I working for free? Well, I work for free because that's what saves my life. So I shouldn't be complaining, but it's a funny world, and there's been this real rise in people who are doing recovery to make money, and I don't know that really works, but that's me.
I mean,
So
Pascal, how do you feel about the incarcerated or firefighters and the way it's being portrayed? Because the first thing people always say is they're not allowed access to jobs. There are some jobs they can qualify for, but how do you feel
Yeah,
about the
there's
whole?
a lot of confusion in terms of the way it's being, it's being depicted because a lot of people I hear the reports is like, oh, it's slave labor, it's like mass incarceration, prison industrial complex, blah blah blah. And I didn't know the fact that they were voluntary and that they were trained with the actual skill, but they went away to the actual fire camp to actually learn how to put out the fire. I wasn't made aware of that, but I think it would be beneficial that if they could actually find a way after they get out to actually become firemen. If there was some kind of like transference of that knowledge into actual fire services or fire rescue, that would be helpful. You know, but again, finding employment for people who've been incarcerated is it's a difficult process. You know what I'm saying? Trying to help them get them acclimated to the real world is not often easy because employers are hesitant to take them in.
yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about that, Pascal? I'm sure you're open to hiring people with felonies, regardless of what those felonies are, in these government positions. But we have to be honest that there is an aversion that many people have when it comes to living next to incarcerated people, and working with formerly incarcerated people, or was it formerly
Well, the
incarcerated?
question becomes, I mean, if we're going to believe that all right, a person has paid their time and their debt to society, why are they still being punished after they have done so? I mean, I understand the psychological fear and paranoia, but doesn't that mean that the concept of rehabilitation or the rehabilitative element of incarceration is a sham? And we're saying that there's no way to, allow that person back into society? Because my question is that we've got to find some way to incorporate that person back into society. And we can't just simply allow them to fester, because there's a direct correlation between mass incarceration and poverty. Because what ends up happening is that you're going to have this is something that adversely affects segments of the black community, is that you're going to have all of these people who are convicted felons. They can't find work, and then as a result, they become a lumpen proletariat, and they can't find ways to reproduce themselves economically. That becomes problematic, and it also leads to recidivism. So what I would say is that I think that we have facilities that find a way to train them with skilled labor where they can make money is something that is a necessity.
Yeah. Well, and it also goes to, like, and we're getting a little far afield, but one of the worst things that we have in America is the whole adversarial justice system, which no other country, as far as I know, really has. Because again, if you have money, you're going to get off, right? And if you don't, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you can't afford a lawyer and you get like the public defender who's like got 40 million cases, he's going to get outgunned by the prosecutors. On the other hand, if you're a very rich person, you can crush the prosecutors. I mean, it's literally like, imagine the prosecutors are like a good college team, and the rich people get, they get the Denver Broncos, and the poor people get a high school team. Is basically how it works. And this whole idea of like, well, if they go up against each other and they both do their best job, then justice will be served. That's just bullshit. And there were justices, I think I want to say it was Justice Black. There was a justice that wrote a whole bunch of papers about how we needed to get rid of that system. But again, because we are America and we're always right, we're not on the metric system. We have our own adversarial system. And
It's if you don't have money to begin with, let's say you're maybe not super good times poor, but you're just standard American, you can't get the Jordans, and kind of poor. You commit a crime, whatever that crime may be, and you gotta go to the real prison.
oh yeah, well,
Your options in the workforce is starting to get real limited.
Well, and see, that's the thing that sometimes when, and there was a couple people in the chat, I just want to say, I get it that in a more fair system, you wouldn't have fire camp and people fighting fires so that they don't go to Chino. But the reality is, if you go to those California big prisons, your life is it's irrevocably changed 99% of the time in a way that is not good. So if I had a loved one and their choice was Chino or fire camp, it's not even an argument.
Well, it seems like the thing is, I maybe not so much the problem with the fire camp. It's more of because you do want people to have some sort of skill, right? You don't want to just I don't want to throw you in a cage, have you do nothing all day but fight and fuck each other, and then wonder why you come out angry like an animal. what if we gave you a skill, but I have to give you something on the other side
No,
once you get out.
agree. I
And
agree
that's
with
the
that.
failure.
I've
That's
literally,
the failure of these states, right?
I literally, when I was in the city, I talked briefly with some of the fire people who I love about like, why couldn't we do something like that? And, you know, again, it's like big city, like, that'd be a great idea. We'll never do it. But I did talk to them, and, you know, that would be, maybe we should require Rick Caruso to only hire fire camp kids.
That would be awesome. But sadly, you know, he'd be like, you know what? That's a great idea. I will. You guys get $12 an hour. You'll figure it out, you know?
I don't know. I will tell you, those kids are buff though, man. They like there's a lot of people in you know, parts of LA who spend a fortune on trainers who will never be as buffed as those kids.
As buff as I mean, Pascal, what say you? You have the great vocabulary. Can you synthesize all this?
It's a conundrum, man. It's not an easy puzzle, man. It's not. I don't think we should act like there's an easy answer for this. It's one of those problems in the society, in the capitalist, realistic society that we live in. But we have to ask, what do we do with these people who have been rendered to the underbelly of American capitalism, and how do we find a way of integrating them back into the functioning of society? And it's not easy.
Yeah. But again, I think the first step is admitting we have these problems. And I think that's been my biggest disappointment of the last year. My two biggest disappointments about the presidential election was the lack of serious discussion about issues for the most part. And my second biggest one was like having to watch Kamala go out there and like, I will build a bigger wall than Donald Trump. And I'm friends with Liz Cheney. That was, I'm sorry, I don't know what to do with that, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, how do you started the show off talking about the people that work in the county that were kind of responsible for this. No one's really talking about them, so they're not in the newspaper articles that I'm reading when it comes to their responsibility here. Is it fair that Karen Bass is taking the responsibility for this?
No, the responsibility should be shared.
Okay.
But B, like I said before, like whoever let her go to Ghana, like you might as well like put a T-shirt on her with a target. You know, that was just stupid. But no, it isn't fair. It isn't fair at all. But life isn't fair, you know, that's what they say. But yeah, I wish there was more questioning of like, you know, why did the same thing happen to Altadena? You know, why wasn't the county firefighters with a bigger budget more prepared to help Altadena? You know, why wasn't Karen Barger out there saying we need to have, you know, firefighters ready to go, and why nobody's asking those questions of her? Do I think part of it's racism? A little bit. Do I think part of it's the nature of like why people run for mayor in Los Angeles, because you're more of a, you know, a name in some ways? But you know, this has been going on for years. You know, they had a vote a long time ago. The fact that there's 5 supervisors and they have these massive budgets, and they've known, I mean, I'm not going to say they're quite as corrupt as Vernon and Bell, but they're almost. But they're usually very, you know, well put together, you know, white people that get to be the supervisors. And I mean, right now it's Janice Hahn, Lindsay Horvath, Karen Barger, Hilda Solis, I think, is the only person of color that's one of the 5. And if you know anything about Hilda, you know, she's she's more more of the 1% probably than Karen or Lindsay. And I've not, and I don't know her well, but I've known Lindsay forever. I mean, she's been part of the political scene. I think my friend Josh Kaminsky introduced me to her, and she's one of those, like, I got introduced to her, and the next thing I was getting emails like every other day from her, like, she there's like those people, and this is like 20 years ago, and she was still, in West Hollywood. It's like, she was already like, as soon as you met her, somehow she had your email, and she was blasting out stuff to you. So she's been building that for a long time, and now she's the supervisor, and and if you watch the press conferences, they all look like idiots, but for some reason, Karen's the one who's getting hammered, and
She almost looks lost. Have you seen her in the interviews, Pascal? She looks like,
I remember I saw one where she got caught out there. She was being asked questions. She literally had nothing to say.
nothing.
She was like sitting there.
Yeah, that it's oof. Does not look good for that woman.
She's not as smart as like some other people, but she's certainly not dumb. She's very thoughtful. She usually does her research. But yeah, she's looked like a deer in the headlights. And
I think the trip to Ghana threw her off.
It really did. And I don't get that, because there was so much warning. Everybody in LA, I mean, I'm in Athens, Georgia, and everybody in LA that I knew was telling me it was going to be bad. So how the people around her didn't help. I mean, that's what I say. It's like, when you're a mayor like that, you got to have people around you who are like, no, don't go to Ghana. No, don't do this, don't do that. Because it's a big job. You're not going to know everything, but
that's huge. That's huge. Even if everything happened the way it was, she wasn't going to stop the wind, right?
No.
If everything happens, but she's there.
Right.
And she means I was supposed to do this thing with President Biden, and I didn't, because I knew my priority, the people of Los Angeles. Again, nothing probably would have changed.
Well, that's a big part of those jobs, though, is showing up and looking like you're in charge, even if you're not really in charge, because there is a part of that. It's not ceremonial per se, but when a city's going through what LA was going through, they want to feel like, mom and dad are there, it's going to be okay,
Who benefited from that during COVID? Andrew Cuomo in New York.
Yeah, at first Andrew Cuomo was doing really well, and then he got Me Too'd and wiped out. But Andrew wasn't saying anything different than anybody else was saying. He just did it better.
What about Gavin Newsom? What do you think about the way in which Trump is trying to level blame at him for what's going on with the fires?
Well, I think Gavin has some blame, but not really. But Gavin shot down. Gavin's problem is, like, if you tell him you're having a bar mitzvah in the backyard with 5 voters, he'll be there, and he'll tell you what you want to hear. He raced down there, which was a good thing on one level, I think he thought, but then he became a lightning rod. And Gavin's problem is, and it's kind of true about him, but he just seems so insincere. He always seems like he's trying to sell you a used car that you don't want to buy. And
he seems like the kind of guy that would totally fuck your wife.
Yeah. Well, the kind of guy that would be married to Kimberly Guilfoyle, when she was in the
she was still hot.
Yeah, well, but she was also in the anyway. Poor Kimberly. She needs to sue her plastic surgeon.
Ooh. I mean,
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was mean. I shouldn't have. Please.
He's the from the animated Batman. Gavin Newsom is the stereotypical politician. I thought he was going to run this last time against Donald Trump. He didn't. I think he'll try to run this time. I think that's why you're seeing such an attack on him. Because they want to point the finger at liberal California as the fail state.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know where Gavin goes. I mean, it's funny because and this guy was a good coach and a good general manager, but I always felt the same way about Pat Riley that I feel about Gavin Newsom. I just, you know.
I saw something recently because I think it was either in the Chronicle or the San Francisco Standard, and I'll leave with this. London Breed is out in San Francisco, and
she's finished.
Like is all of the Willie Brown is the Willie Brown era over now in San Francisco now that she's out?
Take it even farther back, the Jim Jones era.
Okay.
All those guys got votes. Like, San Francisco is one of the most corrupt cities ever.
Sure.
And Jim Jones brought those people up from LA, and apparently there was two of them that they were thrilled because they were able to vote in all 82 precincts or whatever it is in the mayor's race. Mm-hmm. It's Willie Brown. But yes, the whole Willie Brown era, and there's a great documentary on Shirley Chisholm, where you see the rise of Willie Brown when he screwed her over at the 72 convention. And it's just great. And when you see, I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen it, Pascal?
No, I heard about it, though. I want to see it.
But Willie Brown's his best Nikita Khrushchev, and he's up there like, give me back my votes, my delegates. And he's just completely hosing Shirley Chisholm. And, it's just evil. And everybody caved, right, to Willie Brown screaming because McGovern needed those votes. And so it was that's when you really see how politics kind of works, is like McGovern was willing to make Willie Brown's career because he didn't want to go through a second, vote, because he's afraid of what would happen. And then, of course, he did such a great job against Richard Nixon. Willie Brown, I don't think most people know how powerful Willie Brown was.
He was the mayor in California, man.
He was the man in the United States, because as California went back then, the states went. And you couldn't get anything through if Willie didn't get a taste. That was just how it worked. And a lot of people think that's the reason there's term limits in California, is because of Willie Brown. And it could be true.
Liberals loved Willie Brown.
They did.
Yeah, they
loved
did.
Willie
But
Brown.
They used to love Nancy Pelosi too. Don't ask me why.
But Nancy Pelosi never paraded around her side chick for the media like Willie Brown did with Kamala Harris. That's my favorite to this day. A local news station where I'm from. I don't think the station exists anymore. TV for those old schoolers from the Bay that are watching right now. There's a clip. There's a channel I follow on Instagram, and it's called Retro Bay Area, and I think it's the people that used to run TV20, and because they have access to those archives, they played a clip when Kamala got announced of when Willie Brown was at some San Francisco gala with her. And the reporter goes, "Oh, is this your daughter?"
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that clip.
And she's like, "No, I'm not."
It's that's, I don't want to relitigate 2024, but good Lord, what a just everything about it was wrong. It's just so bad. It was like. And the funny thing is, I was in Paraguay most of this summer, and it was like watching like this weird television show. And I think I've told Jason this, but Pascal, I'm down in Paraguay, and people are asking me about the presidential election. And I was trying to figure out what the look that they had when they would ask me these questions was. And it took me a while. And then at one point, I was walking away from somebody, said, "Oh, that's pity. They're looking at me with pity." the the Paraguayans are looking at the and it's like, I remember this from high school when I went 1 for 20 in the big game. Uh, did Jason?
No, I'm here.
There.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to say in closing, Pascal?
No, this has been a great show. I really appreciate Bill, and you guys giving us some inside framing to California politics and these wildfires.
Well, I do my best, and there's other people more inside than I've been. I've occasionally been in the rooms with some of those people, but when they're when they're really like doing the evil stuff, I haven't been around for that, so I can only imagine. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I love LA, and I love my friends, and I really love the Altadena, and I'm just tremendously worried about if it can even really come back. But one of my friends who lost everything posted something the other day, and this is something slightly hopeful, but because he was able to keep his sense of humor. And there's no house there, right? It's completely gone, burned to the ground, right? And somehow, some way, because he's a friend of mine, so they had a joke plastic flamingo next to the house. Nothing happened to it.
Wow.
And he wrote, "What do they make these out of?"
Make my house out of it.
Everything else is gone, and there's the damn plastic flamingo.
Oh, question. Do you need stories? You have
What's that?
one David Lynch. David Lynch, the director. Do you have any David Lynch stories?
I love David Lynch. The closest I have, I used to know one of his producers, but he's kind of an idiosyncratic person. But the one not regret, but when I was in college, I used to help bring the speakers to campus. And we got this weird phone call from this agent, and it was David Lynch's agent. He wanted to come and show Eraserhead because nobody would show it. And they sent us a print, and we watched it. We were talking to him on the phone. And I love my university, Washington University, but they didn't have the right camera on it. We had it set up at this movie theater nearby, and at the last minute, one of the administrators put the kibosh on it because it wasn't on campus. Otherwise, we were going to bring him out to show Eraserhead, and I really wish that would have happened because he was a nobody then. But that's about it. I mean, I used to drag people to Eraserhead before he blew up, and he's one of those guys like Patti Smith. The couple times I had a chance to meet him, I said no because I just love them so much, and what if they were having a bad day? So there you go. But I'll tell you one thing I said the other day. I think what we're missing right now in movies and in a lot of things is you had this amazing artist who was had his own vision, and yet he was making studio movies and was actually making money for those studios. And it seems like right now we don't have a lot of those people that are supported culturally by at least enough people that they get to make big movies, or big music or whatever. And we were very lucky to have somebody like that, so
For that long.
that's all I got to say.
Well, Bill, thank you very much. Pascal, thank you. We'll definitely be back Tuesday. And on that note, we are out. Have a great weekend, everybody.